Hello, so I'm just sat here procrastinating pretty much, but yeah, I'm just going to talk about some things, just wherever it takes me. One topic I had in mind was the human mind. Yeah, it's quite an interesting thing, isn't it? Because we use our minds for everything, and it's like, oh, how do we keep our minds in, I guess, an optimal state in order to be conducive to the life we want to live? And is that a hard thing or is it an easy thing? And I think in today's society, especially, it's a lot harder than perhaps it used to be because of all the technology and distractions that we have around us, and it can sort of distract us from the things that we're supposed to be doing. And there's actually evidence that overindulgence of social media or electronic devices can actually shrink parts of the brain. So if you spend a lot of time on social media, it shrinks the part of the brain which regulates emotions and concentration and focus. So that's one thing that we should probably try to avoid, or maybe not avoid completely, but definitely regulate. We should. I think now more than ever we need some sort of structure to our lives. Otherwise, we're literally gonna get lost in the chaos because this is a chaotic world, and um, that isn't necessarily conducive to living, I guess, a fulfilling life. Because if you get lost in the chaos, you're not going to be able to go on a set path. You're not going to be able to get anywhere in life. And maybe this is just, I don't know. I guess there's just one perspective, and maybe it's just speculative. But I think there's definitely truth to it. Um, because there are certain lifestyles which I guess are favoured over others. For example, a life of which you perhaps go to university, go to college, or go to university, get a degree, and become, I guess, a socially accepted person, become credible. It's higher than a life of someone who perhaps never gets a job, um, and just takes drugs for the rest of their life. You can't really positively compare those two lifestyles. And yeah, I'd much rather live a life which is perhaps conducive to the society I'm living in. And it's quite strange me saying that because I never used to think that way. I used to think that the whole system is a bad thing, and it's something that needs to be defeated almost. But is that really the case? I don't know. Just because I felt like I couldn't, just because I felt perhaps held back in society, or felt like that I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do because of some sort of control, something which was beyond my control. Why should I want to make the whole system crumble? And the thing is, when we say system, what is it that we actually mean by that? Is it isn't it's quite a broad term, and it's not something arbitrary. It's the whole reality which we live in. It's politics, it's literature, it's everything that has an influence on the reality that we're living in, all the different institutions. And for that to break down could lead to absolute chaos in society. And yes, things may be chaotic now, but it's chaotic in a different way. It's not like a physical chaos. It's not like things are completely out of order. Like, and by complete chaos, I would mean something like, I guess we could compare it to Nazi Germany, where there's literal genocide, or just any war environment or anything like that. That's complete chaos. Things could be a lot worse than how they are now, and I think we have to take that into consideration. Yes, things could be a lot better, but they could be a lot worse. And yeah. So, by what I guess what I mean by, or how I can relate that to myself, or the way that I used to think about things, was I used to say that the system's a joke and we need to sort of. I used to go along the lines of start a Marxist revolution, but I think that's an extremely uneducated conclusion to come to. It's probably partially because I do sociology and I wasn't necessarily thinking about that. Like, I used to be extremely libertarian in my political views, and I still advocate for as much freedom as possible and as little state intervention. But the thing is, we need a government, and I probably say this because of the amount of serial killer documentaries I've watched recently, and I know what humanity is capable of if left to its own devices. We need that degree of control, and yes, we can say that we're free, and that we should be as autonomous as possible, but we can't universalize that. Not everyone wants to do good or be good or live a life which is conducive to social order. Some people just don't care. Some people actually want to be evil. They want to induce suffering on the world because they get off on that. And we can't just say that we don't need a government, because we do. We need a legislation. We need someone who's above us in order to keep us in check. And I'm not saying this applies to everyone, but you can't just talk in terms of, yeah, well, I don't need that, so no one needs that. We've got to look at things almost collectively. Like, if we get rid of this, what is that going to do to society? Yes, it may only be a minority, but we don't know that. We don't know what a world would be like without laws. We don't know what a world would be like without governance. And I'm not sure I'd want to know that. And this links to natural law, which I've been studying at college. It's like, yes, natural law is a religious theory, and it's the idea that we use reason to do good, and that there is an objective good in the world, but it's reliant on the premise that people want to do good. It's not a method of morality or ethical decision making which is independent. It's not something that can function on its own. It's dependent or contingent on a tangible authority like law. Like, natural law used to work because people were predominantly religious. They believed that there was a God which was going to punish them after death, but that's not the case anymore. The case is that we need a physical legislation or prison system. And yes, we always have had a prison system, which perhaps acts as a deterrent, but I think now we need it more than ever. And like, it's so strange, because if you'd have asked me this question a year ago, or if I was talking about this topic a year ago, I would have been like, we don't need a government, we can look after ourselves, we can go our own way. But that's really not realistic to say that. We just can't. There is some evil people in the world, and the thing is, people do evil things even with the risk of being put in prison. So imagine what people would do without that deterrence there in the first place, or without that I guess, risk of incapacitation, without the fear of imprisonment. What would people do if that wasn't there at all? I think there would be way more crime. And the thing is, it wouldn't actually be labelled as crime, because for something to be a crime, it first has to be a law. There first has to be a law there which inhibits a person from doing it, or perhaps deters a person from doing it, or attempts to stop a person from doing something. But if there's no law there in the first place, is there right and wrong? And that begs the question, are right and wrong intrinsic values, or are they something that has just been created by humans? Are they just a human construct in order to maintain order in society? But then, so this, I think there is an objective truth to having an ordered society. It's like, and good and bad. Like, there's some things that we just can't argue as morally correct. Like, murder, is murder ever right or wrong? And then again, it comes back to this question of context. Are there absolutes? And yeah, or is everything relative and there is no truth? It's so strange, and it's such a long discussion that I could really talk for hours about, but I've only got like 2 more minutes left of recording, so I'm unable to do that, unfortunately. But yeah, they're all really interesting questions. Like, is morality subjective, or is there an objective truth to it? Is the law based on some sort of intrinsic moral values, or is it based on the fact that it's just a means of control. But I think just by reducing the law to a means of control is extremely reductionist, and it doesn't actually do what the law is in place to do. It doesn't do that justice. There seems to be so much more to the law than just that. It does seem to be a representation of some sort of consensus we have around morality, and I think it is necessary. I'm pretty sure it's necessary. Yeah. I don't know. I'm feeling a little bit nihilistic right now. Like, is there any truth, or is everything relative? Is there intrinsic truth or not? And apparently there isn't intrinsic truth because of the diversity across the world. But again, I don't think it's something I should bother getting too intertwined into or too wrapped up in, I guess, because there does seem to be truth or different walks of life that I just need to educate myself on, so I can eventually perhaps conclude um my knowledge. But right now I don't feel like I know enough to be able to do that.